Welcome back to Gaming News with Spoons. Let's go ahead and hop into today's topics and talk about the one that definitely excites me the most. So, Shin Megami Tensei is a series created by Atlus that the Persona games are kind of an off-branch of. When it comes to the mainline series, they're definitely much darker, but Shin Megami Tensei If was one of the first games in the franchise to kind of take the high school setting and kind of put it inside of a school. As a matter of fact, Shin Megami Tensei If is pretty much where the Persona games originally started to branch off and kind of become their own. Characters from Shin Megami Tensei If make their way into the first Persona game as the events kind of coincide with each other. Now, as it stands, this is the one game that we have not gotten a fan translation of until recently. Aeon Genesis, the same people who did the fan translation of Shin Megami Tensei and Shin Megami Tensei 2, have gone and created and finished a brand new patch for Shin Megami Tensei If. I have downloaded this. I will eventually go in and play it, but I thought this was really cool because this is something that I always want to continue to see these fans do, so we get a chance to play some of these games that we wouldn't. So if you're a Shin Megami Tensei fan, if you've always wanted to play Shin Megami Tensei if you're a fan of the Persona franchise and kind of want to see the game that started it all, this might be a game to go in and actually take a look at. You can find places on the internet to download the patch, and you can go from there. Next up is another fan translation of yet another game, this one being a PSP game called 7th Dragon 2020-2. And this has been translated by Group Caves Peak, and this of course was yet another PSP game. They did have a 7th Dragon game actually on the Nintendo 3DS that you can... So this is kind of like, I believe this is the second game in the franchise, and I think there's a patch for the second one. I'll take a look at that and see if there's an English translation and leave that in the comments down below. Pin it to the top, so those of you interested in seeing if that has a fan translation as well can go in and check it out. But some really exciting news, and this, guys, is why the ROM community, the emulation community, is so important, because this is sometimes the only way that we're able to go in and play these games and get them localized and have a bunch of dedicated fans working on a project to make sure that people like me, make sure people like you that don't read or speak Japanese are able to play these games that we're very, very curious about. So kudos to you guys, and thank you again at Aeon Genesis and Cavespeak for going in and giving us these fan translations. With that being said, let's go ahead and hop into some really quick news here. For those of you who are familiar with a survival horror game that was on the Xbox 360 as well as Steam called Alan Wake, you will have known that Alan Wake was removed from Steam, as you could not buy Alan Wake anymore. That's not the case anymore. It has been relisted on Steam, so you are able to go in and actually purchase that. Now, Alan Wake is definitely a game that is worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of survival horror. It's a very deep, engrossing story, very atmospheric, very good game, and I highly recommend it. Next up, I want to talk about is a couple of things coming from Level 5, and we're actually going to pull up an article here from Silicon Era and actually go over this. So let's go ahead and hop into our news segment here, and we'll check out and kind of read what Silicon Era has to say about this. So Level 5 canceled PSP horror RPG Ushiro confirmed for the Nintendo Switch. Following a teaser for a possible revival of Level 5's canceled PSP horror RPG Ushiro, the company president Akihiro Hino revealed in this week's Famitsu magazine that it is headed to the Nintendo Switch. Now, what excites me most about this is the fact that this is a RPG horror game. This is something that rarely happens. It has been dived in before in such games as Sweet Home, Kodelka, Shadow Hearts. These were all games that kind of used a survival horror setting or a horror setting to more or less along the lines be an RPG. Now, at least three of those games that have done that I know are actually really great games, and that's the Shadow Hearts series. So this is something definitely that I would like to see more of. And if this is the case where it's going, this is a game I'm going to keep a very close eye on, because it's blending two genres that I really enjoy together, and I want to see more games that can pull this off. So we shall wait and see what Level 5 has in store for Ushiro, but it definitely sounds like to be a very intriguing project. Next up is Sony and Other Ocean Interactive making a Medieval remake, not a remaster. So I'm imagining this is probably more or less going to be along the lines of a ground-up remake. We're going to see the game kind of remade for a modern generation. Whether or not them saying that this is a ground-up remake, as being in the terms of what Crash Bandicoot was, where they were able to reuse some of the same assets but give it a fresh coat of paint, or whether or not they're starting from a brand new source code and moving up, it's hard to say, but that's kind of where I'd take that particular statement and what's going on there. And the last bit of news we have that I want to talk about before we get into Sony's name change here, is that something I want to talk about, is Sega Age's Dreamcast games may be coming to the Nintendo Switch. And this is pretty exciting because the Dreamcast had such a unique library of games. It was a short-lived console with quite a few memorable titles. One such game that comes to mind that I would personally like to see be brought over to, I guess a couple I'd like to see be brought over to the Nintendo Switch would be Skies of Arcadia and Makken X, or Makken. Makken was a game created by the same people, same group, that brought us the Shin Megami Tensei games. As a matter of fact, you can heavily tell the game's art style is really focused around the Shin Megami Tensei type look, as it's the same character designer. I want to say Kazuma Kaneko? I think that's the guy who did the artwork for the original Shin Megami Tensei games and first two Persona games, but those are just a couple of titles I would like to see be brought over. Of course, why stop there? It also has a load of other great RPGs that I feel would feel right at home on the Nintendo Switch. This is why the Nintendo Switch definitely has the potential to become a really great system and really revive interest in this particular thing. At some point, I need to make a video about Sega and a lot of the things that they're doing right, and kind of where I'd like to see them go, and maybe games to take a look and remaster and bring over to the West that I think should happen. But what I want to close this video out on right now is the PlayStation name change, because you guys have probably heard you're going to be able to change your name with PlayStation, but it's going to feature some really weird things. Apparently you can actually lose paid DLC by changing your name. You can lose game save datas, you can lose a whole bunch of this random stuff. It doesn't even sound like it's worth it, and how Sony's not able to get this right when Xbox can do it no problem whatsoever, I don't understand. Because everything's kind of tied to that email address, so wouldn't that kind of be the same way you log in? your credit card information, everything there. You have everything on there, or whatever your account being tied to that. It doesn't make much sense to me, but whatever. It is what it is. And personally, this is something I wouldn't do. This is why I like my PlayStation username. This is why I chose a name that I wouldn't regret, because it's something that was just going to stick and something you're going to want to continue on with it. But with that being said, guys, thank you again for tuning in to Gaming News with Spoons. Be sure to hit subscribe there for me to keep updated with all of my content. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Links are going to be down below in that description box. Hit subscribe there to check out and keep up to date with gaming news. And most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. Spoons is checking out.